In 2011, I was one of a group of Palestinian Freedom Riders who set out to challenge one manifestation of Israel's apartheid system, the ban on Palestinians traveling on certain Israeli settler roads, and as an extension of that, of using Israeli buses. Our goal was not only to defy this ban, but we hoped to expose the fundamentally racist nature of Israeli policies and the complicity of international companies enabling it. Specifically, there were two buses operating in the occupied West Bank, an Agid, an Israeli company, and a French international company, Veolia. So one thing that we did was to call on all supporters of what we were doing to take up actions to pressure Veolia to end its collusion with Israeli apartheid. And this is the essence of BDS, boycott, divestment, and sanctions. It's people around the world taking individual and collective action to make Israel's racist apartheid system impossible to maintain. Throughout history, it's been these kinds of action, of people power, that have brought down oppressive systems. Of course, the Palestinian Freedom Riders, we took our inspiration from the freedom rides of the U.S. Civil Rights Movement. And this isn't to say that the situations are similar. In the Civil Rights Movement, the Freedom Riders were campaigning for equal rights and the right to sit at the front of the bus. In our case, we were not and are not seeking to just be able to ride Israeli settler buses or travel on these settler roads. No. These roads are built on confiscated Palestinian land, and we want our land back. But drawing on the similarities we felt was important in order to give people that might not understand the situation in Palestine a familiar reference point. Like I imagine the American Freedom Riders were, we were a bit nervous. Or at least I was. I remember that morning thinking, oh God, I don't want to die today. Because we were going to try to board a bus that was to be filled with Israeli settlers. And settlers are notorious for attacking Palestinians. Sadly, usually as Israeli police or the army stand by and watch, and the Israeli justice system never holds Israelis accountable for Palestinian deaths. So Palestinians have been savagely beaten and some killed by settlers with near total impunity. However, we were lucky because we had a lot of media that took interest in what we were doing and accompanied us. And I do think that that played a large role in protecting our lives and our limbs. So that morning, we are standing outside of an Israeli settlement where we are not permitted to be. After a few buses passed us without even stopping to let us on, one bus did stop. I think the bus driver was a bit confused, but we were finally able to board a bus. We didn't make it very far, though. At a checkpoint into Jerusalem, our bus was pulled aside. Now, generally, Israeli settler buses are not pulled aside. The Israeli checkpoints are there to stop Palestinian buses. I think our bus driver must have signaled to the Israeli security at the checkpoint that he had a problem on board, and the bus was pulled aside and boarded by Israeli police and security, who first demanded to see our IDs, which we complied with and showed them, and then demanded that we get off the bus. We all refused, asserting our right to be able to travel freely, to travel into Jerusalem. But eventually, one by one, we were dragged off the bus and arrested. Even though we didn't get very far that day, I'd like to think that our action, our freedom ride, helped some people understand a little bit about what's happening in Palestine, at least that one aspect of it, and understand why it's so wrong. It was wrong in the segregated United States. It was wrong in apartheid South Africa, and it is wrong in Palestine today. And we need the help of the international community to end that. Now, less than 2 years after our freedom ride, Veolia did sell off its bus line in the occupied territories to an Israeli company. That is owing to the countless number of people around the world that have been campaigning and applying pressure, trying to shame Veolia for being part of this apartheid system. And so Veolia finally decided that it was no longer profitable to maintain that bus line, and it sold it off. This doesn't let Veolia off the hook because they are still colluding in other aspects of the occupation, but that is one victory. One victory that we were able to achieve working together, Palestinians with people around the world that are saying enough, and we all have to do something to make this stop. I think that there are pros and cons to using the term apartheid in the context of Palestine. Pros in that people know of apartheid as it existed in South Africa, and the whole world now knows that this was a brutal system that oppressed blacks and browns, and it was wrong. And one of the ways that apartheid was fought in South Africa is through local and international boycott and divestment campaigns and sanctions efforts. So when we say apartheid was wrong for South Africa then, and it's wrong for Palestine today, we're giving people a reference by which to try to understand what is happening in Palestine, and also to say, here is one thing that we can do to try to bring apartheid to an end in Palestine, like we did in South Africa. Boycott, divest, sanction. Another positive is that apartheid is an international crime, a crime against humanity. And I don't think that we reference or use this enough, but we should. Because what Israel is doing undoubtedly fits into the definition of the crime articulated in the International Convention on the Suppression and Punishment of the Crime of Apartheid. And criminals need to be brought to justice, and we need to keep working to bring those Israeli leaders and military and political leaders that are perpetuating this racist, oppressive, brutal system in Palestine. We need to bring them to justice. Now, the negative, I think, is that what is happening in Palestine goes beyond what apartheid looked like in South Africa. And I don't mean to minimize the brutality of the system in South Africa at all, but this has been said by South Africans themselves. It was said to me when I was in South Africa speaking about Palestine. It was said by, amongst others, Archbishop Desmond Tutu. The Afrikaners put black South Africans in Bantustans, just as Israel has done to Palestinians. But on top of that, Israel terrorizes the ghettoized Palestinian communities, attacking them by air, sea, and land, bulldozing homes and means of livelihood, cutting people off from their homes, schools, families, hospitals, cutting off means of sustenance, firing missiles into homes and schools and shelters, blowing people to pieces. I don't think that this was done in South Africa, and so that's another layer that is added to the apartheid that Palestinians are living under. And so perhaps just by using the term apartheid, we're neglecting to coin our own term to describe the brutality of this regime that is specific to Israel. Maybe. We really need to make apartheid history once and for all.